Yo, 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 yo. What's good, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to your daily dosage, or I guess weekly dosage, of the Uncommon Commentators. Always appreciate y'all for joining and hopping with us as we like to discuss all three levels of basketball. And tonight we got a great show, as we always do, but got a special one in particular filled with some special topics and some special guests at that. But, before we get to it, I always got to ask my man how he's feeling. How you feeling, GP? It's always a blessing to do this with you. And yeah, man, how you been? How was your week?
Yeah, man, everything's been good. Been writing articles, and the Hawks, they're on a 5 game winning streak. Thank God we're one game above 500. Can't even tell you how long it's been since we've been over 500, but thank God. So, and hopefully we get keep that going. But yeah, of course, I always enjoy doing this with you and our man Wiley, who's on the ones and twos tonight. So yeah, ready to get it going.
Most definitely, as always, Wiley with the perfect timing, with the perfect pitch, as always. But yeah, I mean, you already know how it is. Gonna go ahead and get to it.
Whoa,
So
whoa,
it's actually
whoa, whoa, brother. Whoa. You are hold up. Hold up. Um Before we get to it, since you since you race into it, this is episode 100, y'all.
okay. I forgot.
Episode 100.
It
100 of
is.
them things in
It
the
is.
books. Um yes, I came on late as far as from producer side, but
hmm
100 shows is 100 shows. 100 shows of consistency. Um 100 shows of coming on here, first off, getting through your normal 9 to 5 day, and then coming on here to give takes, inform, entertain. uh it says a lot. So I mean, hey, celebrate this. Celebrate it. Let it be known. Hey, this is episode
Yes,
100
sir.
of the Uncommon Commentators, y'all. So
Mm,
shout out to y'all boys, man. Continue to keep doing what you do. I'm going to keep continuing to do what I do in the background. But
yes,
we
sir.
had to make sure we let that be known. Also, hit the QR code while I still got this up if you are watching on YouTube. And all right, we'll get we'll get now we'll get to the show.
Nah, man, that was great. That was great, Wiley. Yeah, man, please forgive me. That was absolutely my fault. Completely slipped over that. Man, yeah, yo, it's a blessing to do this. Like I told Garrett, of course, at the beginning of the show, it's never anything fraudulent. I'm always being genuine when I say it's a blessing to have this opportunity and talk about basketball with people you're actually cool with, you're actually friends with in real life, So it's always been a blessing to do this. Got to give a shout out to Jay, absolutely Jay Holloway. I haven't mentioned him on the show in a long ass time, but nah, I literally wouldn't be able to do this without him. So gotta give a shout out to the man himself. Um, got to he made this platform for all of us, from the best MW show to the Uncommon Commentators, and like it's continued to grow every single year, from the W season to the NBA season. It's content coming out all the time. We got people getting credentialed to cover events and stuff like that, so it's like a legitimate media company. So gotta give a shout out to Jay. Most definitely, literally would not be able to do this
Yes,
uh
sir.
most definitely. Got plenty of love for you. And yeah, man, to 100 more shows, most definitely, that we will continue to keep coming and stay consistent, as Wiley said. Absolutely. You got anything you wanted to say, Garrett, at all?
Yeah, man. Before we jump into it, like Antoine said, I am extremely grateful to be on this platform, and Wiley said it best. It's all about consistency because a lot of people can't really do this on a consistent basis. They'll do it for a little bit, then they say, "Yeah, I'm not gonna really do it anymore." So it's all about putting in the hard work, and it goes from Jay to Wiley to me and you, and so we're always putting up good content, and for people to listen on every streaming platform you could think of. And, like I said, this is all about just having that exposure, being consistent, keeping yourself sharp. But of course, we're not going to stop here. We're going to continue to have more episodes. We're going to shoot for another 100 and another 100 after that. And hopefully that we'll be able to continue to bring on more guests, more than likely so, and continue to build onto this platform. And like I said, big shout out to Jay because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him. He built this platform from the ground up, and I'm just extremely grateful for this opportunity. So I'm ready to jump into it and get ready to get the show rolling, bro.
Absolutely, most definitely. Yeah. No better way to get the show started, for real, for real. And yeah, man, again, shout out to Wiley for reminding us about that. It's an honor to be here. We will forever continue to get better doing this content and improving for the sake of the viewership, most definitely. But yeah, for the first topic of the 100th episode of the Uncommon Commentators, no better way to kick it off than with a team that has a lot of momentum, just like how we do. The Charlotte Hornets, they've been outstanding as of late. We have to talk about them because I'll be quite honest, I did not see this coming. They came out with the 4th overall pick last summer. They drafted Colin Kneppel out of Duke University, and that just has completely changed the trajectory of their franchise. I thought he was going to come in and just be a good piece, a good 3-and-D piece for him. He showed great promise in college with 3-point shooting, with defense, even the ball handling too. But to see what he's become as a 3-level scorer, being in the 3-point contest, really like establishing himself like this early. I do think that the Charlotte Hornets are this close to arriving. All they really need at this point is really just some good veterans. That's really all they need. We saw how that took certain teams like the Dallas Mavericks to the next level when they had Luka Doncic and they made the finals. They were a mediocre team in the middle of the season, and they got Daniel Gafford, PJ Washington. They got a bunch of veterans, and they just took them to the finals like that. So I think the only thing this Charlotte team is missing is some veterans to take them to the next level. But I want to focus in on what they have right now with their trio. It's rare that you see a homegrown trio like this, all with all-star potential. It's just cool to see LaMelo not be out there by himself anymore. He was patient with this franchise from day one, and Brandon Miller came in out of Alabama, and now they got Colin Kneppel. They got a true big three, homegrown big three. And the fact that Colin Kneppel was playing this good this early, players like that don't just fall off. He had you can see his family. He has 4 brothers. They all play basketball. Like, it's ingrained in him. He will forever have the mentality of continuing to want to get better. His parents and his family are going to hold him accountable. That's not the case for every athlete. Some of them, some parents are just let their child do whatever. They'd be like a yes man or whatever, stuff like that. He has a circumstance where he's going to be held accountable by his little brothers and his parents, who were both hoopers themselves. So it's kind of like a Reed Shepherd situation. And we know how good he is. So it's really cool just to see, again, how Colin Kneppel is a rookie and he's changed the culture of this whole franchise. We're getting reports that are coming out that they see him as the face of the franchise. And I just think that's solely based off like his personality, how he carries himself. He carries himself like an all-star, literally, already, and he carries himself like a professional. Don't get me wrong, LaMelo, he's been in the spotlight since he was 12 years old. But I think you could definitely say Khan's a little bit more mature in terms of how they act, at least on camera and stuff like that. So they have a nice building block for the future with Colin Kneppel on top of the 2 they drafted before him. So I think right now, looking over the horizon now for the Hornets, I think they're going to be one of the best teams in the league for a long time. When they do hit that next level, I think it's going to be really hard to stop them from their offense to their defense, their 3-point shooting. When you have 3 dynamic scorers like that, all in the same lineup, and they're all going to grow together. It's just a recipe for success. That's the biggest thing too for me. They're gonna all grow together. It's not like one's 29 and the other's 25. And they're literally all gonna grow, develop together. They're gonna win together. They're gonna lose together, and that's best for the cohesion of this culture that they've established. So, they got Miles Bridges, Musa Diabate, got all these players. So, I'm really excited for this team in the future. And the last thing I'll say before you go, of course, Garrett, shout out to Charles Lee. He came into this team, they were rebuilding, and he's completely changed this team around. It kind of reminds me of Ime Udoka a little bit, with the way he's just ingrained his culture into this franchise like that. I think Charles Lee is also the reason. Him and Concanepo are the two reasons why they've completely changed the trajectory of their franchise. We're about to have the Charlotte Hornets back again, back in the playoffs and back in being relevant, since like the Alonzo Mourning days and stuff like that. So how do you feel about the Hornets right now and what they got going on as a franchise?
Yeah, the Hornets, they are steadily improving compared to how we've seen them play over the last several years. I mean, the Hornets, they haven't really been a good team since God knows how long it's been. I mean, it's been that bad, literally.
The Bucks.
And yeah, it's been a long time, but now you're you're slowly starting to see them putting pieces together that make sense and putting players that are winners, honestly, even though that they are not a top 5 or top 6 seed, but you have players that are going to go out, they're going to compete every single night, and guys that make winning plays. I mean, I think that's what helps you turn your team around is when you have players that make winning plays. And to your point, Con Nipple has been really been the highlight of this team thus far. I mean, he's been that guy. And of course, we can mention others such as LaMelo Ball, of course, and Miles Bridges, and of course Kobe White that they just traded for at the trade deadline. But Conker Nipple has been such a tremendous player for them, and his shooting speaks for itself. I mean, I didn't think that the kid was going to come and play at this level, during his rookie year. And even for me, I said it, in earlier times on this platform that Cooper Flag, I thought at the time that he was going to be a lock for the Rookie of the Year, and now I'm not so sure if I don't think it's a lock at this point, honestly. And even though he's been dealing with injuries, but I think that for sure, if Flag doesn't get the Rookie of the Year, I think that most likely is going to go into Connor Knippel. I don't think it's even close compared to other rookies that have been drafted this past draft, and so yeah, I mean the Hornets, they've been playing very good, and like I said, they are building players around that can go out and win games, and they're starting to build an identity as far as playing with pace and having guys that are able to shoot all around. And I mean, when you talk about a backcourt of Knipple and LaMelo Ball, I mean, now you're looking at a backcourt that's one of the best 3-point shooting backcourts in the league. Now, of course, we're not talking about in history, but as of right now, just by adding those two guys together, I mean, they are, legit. And so you're adding pieces around that complement those players. And now when you look at the play in right now, you're looking at teams such as the Orlando Magic, the Miami Heat, the Charlotte Hornets, and Atlanta Hawks. And, ironically, that's the whole Southeast Division. That's just crazy. Crazy to me. Yeah, that's wild. but no, I mean, all these teams are capable of making the playoffs, and I'm not going to lie to you. And I know that we've, as Hawks fans, been praising about the emergence of Jonathan Kuminga, who I think is going to be very great for this team, and him and Jalen Johnson for years to come. If if things turn out well for the rest of the season, but honestly, I do not want to see Charlotte in the play-in, especially the times that we play them this year. I mean, I don't really want to see them. And honestly, I don't think neither Orlando nor Miami wants to see Charlotte. I mean, yes, they are the 9th seed, but I don't want to see them in the first round of the play-in, honestly. I'm hoping that the Hawks, they will catch more fire, even though they're on a 5-game winning streak. I'm hoping that they win enough games to make the 6th seed, or at least make the 7 or 8 seed to give themselves another chance to make the playoffs. But I definitely don't want to see Charlotte in the first round. So that should tell you how good of a team they are this season. And again, them having an identity, and to your point, head coach Charles Lee, who I have a tremendous amount of respect for, and his staff has done a tremendous job of coaching these young players and putting themselves in a position to win and building that winning environment. So you're just seeing a snippet of what this team could be within the next, 2 years max. So I know that they're not done, building around this team, but again, when you look at just how they're able to play together and how they're able to win games. I mean, they just beat the Boston Celtics yesterday, so the other day. So they've been playing very well. They've been beating really good teams as of late. So yeah, I think that the Hornets, they're on their way. I wouldn't say by next season will they be a top four seed. I don't think that they will be there, but just depending on how this all season goes and how well they draft in this upcoming draft. This is one of the deepest drafts we've seen in a long time. So if they're able to hit on their draft picks, and if they're bringing in the right talent via free agency or via trade, then you look at a team that could possibly be a top six seed. I think if they can do it right, then they can certainly make some noise. So, and like I said, that's refreshing to see because again, when you're looking at teams that have not been playing well for recent years, and now you're seeing them riding the ship, the Pistons happens to be one of those teams. They were recently one of the worst teams in the league not too long ago, and then now they're number one overall seed, and honestly, they're my pick to go to the NBA Finals this year. So I think that for the Charlotte, I think that they could be that next team that's been one of those teams that's been in a playoff draft for a long time, and now they're starting to train upward and heading to the right direction. So it's only going to be a matter of time before they start to really take that next step, and when people start to take them serious. So yeah, so I'm genuinely excited to see the Hornets take that next step, and I always remember to my first game to the Hornets game last year, and I can reassure you they're going to have more people in those seats, more fans coming to the games. So I know that they're excited for the future, and they certainly should because they have so many good young players, and like I said, Nipple, he's been shooting the lights out, and to my understanding, I think he's been shooting or nearly, I think he was shooting 40, 50, 90 splits, I believe, somewhere in there. So yeah, he's been very efficient. So yeah, so we'll see how the season goes. But I think for next year, I'm just looking forward to seeing them take that next step.
Mm-hmm. Nah, you're close, man. He's shooting 49% overall, 44% from three,
Okay.
and an 87% from the free
Okay.
throws.
Yeah, I knew. Yeah, I
Nah,
knew it was close. Yeah, I knew it was close. Yeah. Yeah. So he's
mhm.
been. Yeah, those are very efficient numbers. So that's very impressive for a rookie.
Absolutely. And you rarely see that period nowadays. A person being so well rounded at shooting that they're good on the inside, the outside, and they're good at the free throw line. You just don't really see that nowadays, especially like how
Hmm.
you said in a rookie. So I guess even just to end it on Charlotte, I agree with you. I do think they will be a playoff team, if not next year, the year after that. I think at a certain point, once they hit that certain level, again, they're going to be up there for a very, very long time. I'd be shocked if they somehow break this team up, regardless of the money, regardless of anything like that. A team like this that you took so long to build, you don't just go breaking up like that. And I will say this: I think a paradigm shift is occurring in the Eastern Conference. The Hornets, they have their pieces. The Hawks, we certainly have our pieces, most definitely, especially getting Jonathan Kaminga. We just got to hit the nail on the head with that draft pick the way the Hornets did last year. um, and like outside of that, I mean, man, like the Bucks, they're falling to the bottom of the East. The Pistons, they're about to reign supreme at this point. Like they have two All Stars and great depth, the Detroit Pistons. So I agree with you. I do think Detroit is also going to go to the finals this year. Early spoiler, I do think Detroit's going to go to the finals most definitely. It just depends how they perform in that moment. But yeah, man, I'm really excited for Charlotte. It's just good to see the fans get rewarded. We're seeing what's going on in New Orleans with the Pelicans. They're sitting there, going back and forth with Stephen A. Smith on First Take. They should be worried about getting some wins. Um,
Hmm.
and that's not even just a cosign Stephen A. Like the Pelicans, like for real. And even then, because I can't really talk, because I'll be honest, man. Like obviously we know what's going on with the Hawks right now. Like they're over 500 now. We're 32-31. But I think where Charlotte kind of lapped the Hawks is their coaching. I think their coaching. I think the coaching like is second to none when it comes to Charles Lee. I do believe in him more than I do believe in Quinn Snyder. Just being objectively honest about the teams. There's been times where I think Charlotte, they've had lesser talent when the Hawks have faced off with them, and Quinn's been outcoached just with Charles' rotations and how he's moving his chess pieces on the board. So I think that's also gonna make them be hard for Atlanta, like, you know, to try to leapfrog Charlotte now, because I think Charlotte, like, they're basically catching up on the East. Really, that's all I can say, and they're definitely ahead of schedule, for certain. But outside of that, like, we'll see what they do. The playoffs this year, that's gonna be really hard. It's gonna be really hard. But I do agree with you with the play-in spot. I don't think any of those bottom 7 to 10, including the Hawks, I don't think they want to see Charlotte. When it comes to Atlanta, they have to outscore Charlotte to win that game, and I don't think they want to. They don't want to try to do that.
That is a pretty tall task, I have to say. And again, yeah, Charlotte, they're not a top 3 or top 4 seed in the East, but don't let that fool you, because we seen Charlotte this year that are on a 6-game winning streak, and like I said, Charles Lee and his staff has done an incredible job of coaching these players and holding them accountable, and like I said, putting them in positions to win games, and they've been doing that. So, and to your point, when it comes to shooting, they can certainly do that, and they can catch fire very quick. So we just have to, come out with our game plan, and hopefully that it will work. I know that Quinn will, coach our guys and get them prepared. But I will say, if we walk in, like, say if this is the playoff matchup, right? So if everything, stood pat today, and Charlotte would be our first matchup, as long as if the majority of the roster is healthy, if it's 85 to 90% healthy, then I think we certainly have a chance for sure. So that's the only thing that I'll be worried about, because I know we've been pretty banged up this year with other guys, but no, if we're able to have Kaminga and JJ and Dyson and Nall, and of course Okongwu and other guys that have been contributing, because we came up with a big win against the Bucks not too long ago. So if we're able to just stay healthy, then I think we have a fighting chance. So we'll just see how it all goes from there. But yeah, like I said, it's very ironic that it's a whole Southeast Division is in the play-in. I don't think that's ever been done, so far since we had to play in. But yeah, I expect it to be kind of fun per se. And but yeah, there's still plenty of time for us to put some more wins together. And like I said, hopefully that will make a top 6 seed. And a lot of people have been giving the Hawks a lot of credit ever since we traded for Jonathan Kaminga, because on the TL, he's just been, he's just been crazy for us. But yeah, so now we do have a very special guest tonight joining us as we celebrate our 100th episode tonight. He is one of the sharpest voices when it comes down to breaking the game of basketball and breaking down young prospects, analyzing them. And of course, if you're a Hawks fan, I'm pretty sure you have seen his work. He's done such an amazing job. And he is a NBA and NBA draft analyst. So please welcome NBA and NBA draft analyst David Lee to the Uncommentators podcast. And thank you for joining us tonight, my brother. How you doing today?
Of course, man. I'm good. Congrats y'all on 100 episodes. I mean, that takes a lot. I'm already knowing. I try to do my own podcast as well. So congrats.
Oh yeah. Thank you, brother. Thank you. So yeah, we're just gonna jump right into it. So David, first thing I want to start off is just, how did you become an NBA and NBA draft analyst? Because like I said, people that follow, the Hawks Twitter, a lot of people know your work and how you're able to analyze, young players and also breaking down the game as the game goes on. And so how have you just been attached to, that type of environment? Because, just for me, for example, and Antoine can speak on this, when it comes to analyzing, this kind of work, it's not easy. You have to be very critique and very, very, specific. and have a keen eye to understand the game and know how to teach somebody certain plays or certain breakdowns for them to get the full understanding. So how did all this come about?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've been around the game my whole life. I mean, I didn't play like D1 basketball, nothing like that. I say I was quarter to D1, so I was on the women's basketball practice team. So I got to go up and down with them, but I didn't have to do any of the hard parts of practice. So I got to be around basketball at a high level, and I think that really like gave me the itch to talk about it. Like in that same sort of lens, the way plays were presented to me at practice, stuff like that. And then, I mean, just honestly, it's so many ways to learn now. So a lot of like the terminology or the concepts that I'll pick up on is just from watching so much, but then also, learning from people who have already done that groundwork and then trying to build upon it, from an NBA draft lens or from a Hawks lens.
Mm-hmm. And first and foremost, man, my name is Antoine. It's great to finally meet you. Most definitely. I did want to ask you, where are you from? Like, where were you from originally? And like, what was your background? Like, you got any siblings or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm from Atlanta, so born and raised. So I've been here my whole life, and then I got 2 younger siblings.
Mm-hmm. And growing up, like, would y'all like go out hooping all the time or anything? Would you go to like basketball games a lot? Anything like
Oh
that?
yeah, for sure. I mean, I was at Grand Park all the time. Like that's my home court. So yeah, we was hooping all the time.
Mm-hmm. Nah, most definitely. And like, even then with you growing up, like, would you? Because I know you cover the Hawks, but were you a Hawks fan growing up? Like, was that your team, or did
Oh
you
yeah,
like?
yeah. I mean, yeah, the
Mhm.
Hawks was everything to me. That's why, like, I mean, that run in 2016, 2015 was like huge. Like, it was like the first time like we weren't a laughing stock. So I remember like that being a huge part of my life. So yeah, I've been a diehard Hawks fan my whole life.
And the last thing for me, where were you at the time when that happened? I was a sophomore in high school. I was a junior in high school. I was 15, 16, 16, 17. Yeah. I was a junior in high school when that happened. And I know what you mean, because even like the year before that, like they were still just building, and we got Paul Millsap like in 2014. So
Mhm.
even just to see them go that far, even just to make the Eastern Conference Finals, like where were you when that was going on, and what do you remember the most about that run?
Yeah, I remember honestly, I was in 8th grade, so I remember the pain more than anything. Like when we got swept by Cleveland, like that hurt so bad. I remember like I went outside, tears streaming. I was just shooting for 4 hours. My hands were raw, bleeding. I didn't care because Shelvin Mack missed that shot, and it was like, or maybe that might have been 2015, one of those years. Either way, I did it both years. So like that run was so special that the ending I remember more than anything, unfortunately. But I also remember like a lot of those moments with Kyle Korver throughout that season. Like I'd be in the building, like that's like stuck in my head on like verbatim or like on rotation. So I mean, it's a lot of special moments from that season. I look back on that fondly. I think even someone like Paul Millsap is like super underrated. So like that
Right.
season was good basketball.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of Hawks players, David, I do want to ask you, and I do recall when we traded for Jonathan Kuminga, I could be wrong, it seemed like you were 50-50 on it. It seemed like a decent trade, but at the same time, you may had certain reservations on it. So now he's come onto the team, and he's been able to get his feet wet, getting to know the team and the players, and he's been playing well thus far, even though that we haven't really played anybody as of late. But so far, what is your take on his performance? And do you think that he has a future on his team, or do you think that he's still having to, wait and see if he's gonna, really perform at a level that we need him to, or is this just where we just have to wait and see and go from there?
I wasn't a fan of the trade. I mean, quite honestly, like I just wasn't. A lot of it was because I value KP a lot as a player. I mean, obviously, like the availability was an issue, and it was definitely an issue from both the roster perspective or the coaching perspective. Like you got to know who's going to be available on a night basis. It changed everything for their offense when he's on the floor, and it changed everything when he's off. So I think that was a big part of it. And then, I mean, they're both expiring necessarily, so like, you don't have to commit to Kuminga long term. I'm kind of holding back, like my takeaways. I mean, like you mentioned, it's been 3 games, 2 of them against Washington. Portland isn't particularly good right now. But I think he's done so well with like not trying to do too much. Now I think he still took some ill-advised shots, but I mean outside of that, like I don't really have anything negative to say about his debut, and I think that's pretty emblematic of how seamlessly he can fit in, right? But I think that as a player who's had a history of not wanting to fit in and having a more inflated view of himself, I think that's just a point of concern for me, and I don't think that's a bad thing either. Like to be to some extent, you've got to have not delusion, but you got to have belief in yourself and your ability if you want to be great in the league. And if that's what he wants to be, and that's cool. But I do think that the contract situation could get messy, just depending on like where these other guys' books are, what it looks like with Dyson and Jalen. Like those three, there's a reason why. I mean, before Jalen went down, like he wasn't going to play many minutes with Jalen and Dyson. He wasn't going to play many minutes with Dyson. And anyway, so it's like, I think that's the tougher part because they have so much long-term money committed to Dyson and Jalen. And if this guy is not a seamless fit with them, even if he, you know, he does a lot athletically off the catch, the shooting looked good, even the passing looked better than it did in Golden State times as well, then I think it becomes a tougher conversation about what that contract's supposed to be, because the really, my view on the trade will come down to what they do in the summer more than anything. But I'm kind of like, I'm not I'm not a big fan of making decisions based off what you see after the deadline. Like that's dangerous for teams as well. You know, I mean, if it's a 10, 12 game stretch and he looks awesome, then now like that, you know, all that leverage goes to the agency, whatever it may be. So it all comes down to the contract more than anything for me.
And I kind of got three questions because one's draft related, but I do want to ask you about Jonathan. What do you think his ceiling is on this team if he does fit and he can be that starting small forward while Jalen plays the 3 and Dyson plays the 2? What do you think his ceiling would be on a good Hawks team if he fits good?
I mean, he's so athletically gifted that I think it's loud. Like there's, you know, some burst off the catch at that particular position. Like the Hawks just haven't had players of that vertical gift or even that horizontal burst. And I think that's a big difference maker in terms of their wing rotation, right? Like that, undoubtedly they needed that. I think where I get concerned about the ceiling is just like as overall as a team. Like for example, Onyeka has had to take so many threes this year because no one else is really attempting threes. Like it's a low 3-point volume team. And if you introduce another low 3-point volume shooter into that, then now Onyeka has to scale more. Whoever's running the 1 has to, you know, scale more of the 2. So I think about it from that perspective. But I think from a ceiling, I've never really bought the scoring a ton, but I think like he should be a juiced up version of Zach. Like a lot of what Zach does is in transition off screens, and like Kuminga can do that exact same thing, except he's so much more bigger and powerful and stronger. Then I think, you know, like it's not out the realm of possibility that he, you know, averages 20 points per game off the, you know, the easy stuff, and then he has enough, you know, in terms of the in between game or like using his body, you know, punishing people down low. So I'd imagine like I still like I don't really see it. I don't see like I wouldn't want to invest long term into that core, but I don't think it would be crazy for him to be a pretty prolific scorer in this particular environment where I think Quinn Snyder's offense does a good job at, you know, giving guys opportunity to succeed.
Right. Okay. And because I'll ask my draft question after your next question, Gareth. So this is my last follow up. What do you think is going to happen with Zachary Reese-Shea? I wrote an article that I thought like bringing Jonathan Kuminga over could actually benefit Zachary now that he can play in a diminished role compared to being in the spotlight of the starting lineup, getting 28, 30 minutes a game where he has to try to fit into that starting lineup when he has so many people that have higher usage than him, like Jalen, in the starting lineup, like Nickeil Alexander-Walker and stuff like that. I thought Zachary going to the bench with Kuminga coming in and taking that starting role, I thought that'd be better for Zachary now that he can play like lesser minutes, and really just develop in peace, really, so to speak, not have that spotlight of being a 20-year-old starting small forward after the #1 overall pick. So how do you think this is going to affect Zachary Reese-Shea, and how do you feel about Zachary's future after everything he's been through this season?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully it'd be something similar to what like DeAndre Hunter, the season DeAndre Hunter had after they drafted Zach, where Dre got moved to the bench, he got optimized in that role, and he had a really good season, and then the Hawks were able to capitalize on that value by trading him. Doesn't mean they have to trade Zach, but like trying to figure out what's the best role for him, I think definitely makes sense. And having Kuminga gives you the option to do that, you know, to have the option to bring him off the bench, and then I think they could be synergistic with one another as well. I just think the handling could be an issue, but that's why I asked Quinn this at the presser, but it's like he's been very intentional pairing, you know, those minutes with Kuminga and Zach with 2 handlers, whether it's Gabe or Nickeil or Dyson and CJ, like some combination of those guys. And I think as long as you have those 2 other handlers on the floor and then ideally, you know, a Jock or Onyeka, then I think you've got something that makes sense. And I think that they took Zach with the intention of playing him with TRAE. I don't think that like is, you know, I think that's pretty readily apparent. And so now that TRAE isn't here, it's okay. What can we do to try to not recoup our investment, to really maximize the investment? Because it is the #1 pick is consequential. You know, it's one of the 2 times in our history, first time since the league merged that we had a #1 pick, and so that player turning into a replacement player or a bench player isn't the best outcome. But if that's what's the best for his development and his role, then that's what they're going to have to do. And I think particularly going forward too, you want as many minutes as you can to evaluate what Kuminga could potentially look like. So, but that means with Regis Shea as well. So I think that's why they moved. I think they moved Zach to the bench before Kuminga came back for that exact reason. Like if they potentially want to start Kuminga, it's not that big of a deal because Zach's already been coming off the bench. And then I just think, of course, like that lineup made more sense. Like that was like their only good lineup since the deadline. So,
right. Go ahead.
So I do want to ask. So, looking to the off season, there's a lot of things to be excited for. You have the Pelicans pick, and we know that we pretty much have around a 50% chance of getting the number one overall pick in a way, around those numbers with the Pelicans and the Bucks, since we have the most favorable outcome between either one of those two teams in the draft. So you have that. And of course we have the financial flexibility to, make trades and sign players or however we can build this roster. If you were the GM, what would be your overall offseason plan? What moves would you do, or what moves do you think the Hawks should do to, build this team and to take the next step for next season?
Yeah, I think it definitely starts with the draft. So I think right now with the way the Pelicans pick is looking, if it's outside of the top 5, then I probably would look at players like a Damara or Kingston Flemings. Like those are guys that I like in that particular range. And I think that they need to go big, like not big in terms of the type of pick, but actually like a big man, just based off what the 2027 draft class looks like from bigs. Like there's going to be a lot of bigs depth wise in this draft. So like I'm a big believer in the guy from Michigan. He's playing right now. He's having a great game. He's 7'4". He's a lot of traits that I like from bigs, and he's also a stylistic difference with Onyeka, which I think is important. Like you don't want to just be locked into one style play with your big man. And Mara has like all the passing and everything, but he could also play with Onyeka because he plays with multiple bigs at Michigan. So he's high on my list. And then I think whether they go big or guard, I think Kingston Flemings also kind of makes sense for Atlanta, but he's another guy who his 3-point volume isn't super there, so they've got to think about that. And then like later in the draft, I mean, there could be a lot of returners, or not returners. You could have a lot of like guys coming out that maybe aren't projected right now, like someone like I mean, Perez Johnson from Michigan will probably come out, but there's some guys in that range that I like as well. Trying to think like for someone in particular, even like UConn's big is someone that I'd take a flyer on, like it was the late second or something like that. So I think they could, depending on how the board falls, like if Mara's not on the board or Patton or going over from Duke, then you could still get those guys like in that second round. So I think they should be fine from a big depth perspective. And then really it's about like, okay, is Jock, I would evaluate like Jock is someone who is giving us good minutes. Is that someone who want to stay long term? He's proven he's been a rotational level big elsewhere. Does he make sense for this particular scheme? I think you want to move off Corey Kispert as much as possible. Like I think he's been a seamless, like he makes sense within the scheme, but he just makes a lot of money long term. And we've seen once he did the same thing with Terrence Mann. He attached the first round pick with Terrence Mann, got off his contract at the draft, and so we could see something similar to that. I've seen people like float around some deals with the Nets, which somewhat makes sense too, because they've got some guys who they may not want to pay. So, I mean, this year's free agency class is bleak. I mean, there's really not anyone worth truly splurging for. Like even Chris Middleton is someone who, like, you know, if the injuries weren't as bad, I could maybe see, you know, bringing him in to give you like a different type of player at the wing. But that's kind of where that money could also be allocated to Kuminga. So like that's whatever they need. They definitely need wing reinforcements. They needed wing reinforcements before the season even started. They had too many guys who overlapped, right? Like whether it was Luke and Veed or Zach to an extent as well. So I think my biggest sort of area of need from the draft perspective is probably big man. But I think like overall, like I think the wing situation is just as pressing, but it's just not something that I think will be as addressable in the draft, because I think, you know, I like Dalen Swain a lot from Texas, but like outside of a guy like that, you're probably not going to be in a good range to select the wing, depending on where that Cavs pick lands. But that's probably like how I generally would approach it. I think you can't. They were so awesome in free agency this past summer, but I don't really think they'll have that same opportunity for advantages. And you know, like that. Now they got to think about it from like, okay, who has too much money on their books? Who can we dump Corey Kispert to, and then like what can we do in the draft? Like I think their strategy will be a little different this year than it was last year.
And that's actually what my question was gonna be. I was gonna ask you, so if the Hawks were to get like the first through the fifth pick, like if you have if you're liable to pick within that range, who would you like them to pick the most? And if they had the fifth through the 10th, what would be the best possible swing they could possibly get in that? So I guess you could start with the first through the fifth. Like if the Hawks were to get a top 5 pick, who would you want the most out of that top 5?
Yeah, I think Boozer's my guy. I know that there's a lot of people who are like a little concerned about what it looks like with him and Jalen, but I just think, you know, you put guys who are, you know, that big, that have that much feel for the game, and I think Boozer will really shoot it in the league too. So like, I'm not really worried about that pairing. And I think that he's been my number 1 prospect since last June. So I haven't really shifted on that much, and that's not because like, you know, I'm anchored to that, but just more so like that's just that's the regard I hold him in, and I have yet to see, you know, from the other prospects to unseat him. So you know, it should be Darren Peterson, it should be AJ Devonta based on what type of players they are, but they just haven't been able to transcend them, at least for me. And then if Booz is off the board, I'd probably would look at guys like Caleb Wilson. I'd still consider him. I still consider Dalen Swain. I probably, if like, it depends on like where the pick falls, but like outside of those would probably be my 3 guys for the Hawks, like in that 1 through 5 range. And I wouldn't be upset, of course, if they take Darren Peterson or AJ Devonta, but I think like those 3 guys would probably take precedence for me. And you said the other range was which one?
Just 5 to 10. Like if they get like the 7th pick or the 8th pick, like that in that Keaton Wagler, that Nate Ament range, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely go like I mentioned, a Dave Mara there. I think my concerns with Wagler and Ament is like they have so much development ahead of them, especially physically, that like Ament, it wasn't earlier. I was like, okay, he reminds me of Reed shit. That wasn't fair to say because like Ament, like he plays like he's 6'10" to an extent, but like those guys, they're like physically, even like skill development wise, they're not going to give you that value in that first year of their contract. It's going to be at least maybe even their second contract. So like those guys, I think could be pretty problematic for the Hawks to take, just because I'm not convinced that they have that much time to invest in development. Not to say they're going to start contending next year, but more so like, you know, particularly at these positions of need, you know, I don't think that it makes sense to take someone who's going to need 3 or 4 years to become a rotation, you know, level impact player. And that's where I feel Wagler and Ament are. Like, I wish they could go back to school. They're just not going to, because of where they're going to be drafted. Like, teams are going to draft them with the full intention of developing them, but I'm just not sure the Hawks have that same developmental time, if that makes sense. So like, even like from a guard perspective, like I think I like Michael Brown more than Wagler. And I like Darren Peterson more than Wagler. I even like, you know, older guy with Bennett Sturts. But then I would even look at like Hans Steinbach out of Germany. He plays for Washington. Just had a big game last night. He's a little bit tougher just because of the rim protection, but these are like guys that I like outside of, you know, just the Hawks context. So I would take a look at them. I'm not sure if they make sense there. And then even like Krivas for Arizona, like he's another big that I meant to mention a little earlier. Like I wouldn't consider taking him maybe top 10, but you know, maybe with that cast pick, you might be able to scam, you know, pretty good value play. Usually you get some guys in that back half of the lottery. But I mean, it's a lot of talent. So they shouldn't leave with like, especially if you get 2 bites of the apple, I think they'll be able to pick up some guys.
And the last question I got on the draft, Gary, I know we got that last topic we're about to get to in a second. Who do you think would be the best? So do you think Cameron would be the best co-star for Jalen? And do you think if they do get one of those top 5 guys, Caleb, Darren, AJ, whoever, do you think they are going to be a star next to Jalen if the Hawks do get them?
Yeah, I think from like my tiers perspective, I guess I have like 4 stars in this class, but they're all like, they're somewhat different in terms of like the I guess the projectability or the likelihood that they become a star, or even what type of star they are. So to me, I think about Cam and Jalen as like jumbo, like Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. But because they are so versatile in the way they can be used, and because they're such good passers, then I just really like the idea of pairing them together, because I think they'll just make the games easier for one another. I think you'll still run into some of the issues that even like Tatum and Brown do, right? Where like they play the same position, so they get guarded by the same players. But I don't think you run into the same like playmaking or like I guess even like shot creation / strength creation issues, because Jalen Johnson is a different type of player than Cameron Boozer, even if they may occupy certain parts of the floor. Like Cam Boozer he reads the floor so quickly that like Jalen's transition ability, all these other things that they do within the Hawks offense, I think makes a lot of sense to me. I think that, but if you do take someone like Boozer, then you really have to figure out that 5 spot because of what we've seen from Jalen defensively this year, where he's had to take on so much offensively. And he's always kind of struggled guarding on the perimeter. So like you have to have an awesome rim protector at the 5. Now it doesn't have to be a Damar. It could be Isaiah Hartenstein, who I don't think is like amazing, but he's smart. He plays his angles well, and he'll have size around him. So like there's options, but I think Boozer would still be that guy. I think he makes a lot of sense. And then I probably would want to go with Darren, and then I'd probably even say like someone like Dalen Swain before someone like a Caleb Wilson or an AJ, just because I think the concerns that people have with Boozer in terms of fit with Jalen, I think are more applicable to someone like an AJ or a Caleb Wilson. But yeah, that'd probably be how I'd approach it.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely.
So do you think Darren Peterson's injuries, do you think that they are something to take seriously in terms of, despite what he's been through, with his health, he's still the number 1 overall pick? Or do you think that it would make you think twice of whether or not you would draft him as a number 1 overall pick? Because that's been kind of a discussion as of late, where AJ DeBansa may be the safer pick, and not because from a talent level, but you could say from availability standpoint. But we know Peterson has been that guy to be selected number 1 overall. So do you think that if you had the number 1 overall pick, you would still feel comfortable taking Peterson despite of his health issues he's had this season?
Yeah, I mean, hamstrings are tough. Like playing through that it's a testament to him that he's able to play through it. And I also think that it's really hard for people to figure out like just how much it's impacting his game. And I think that's what it really comes down to, is like, because I mean, he's nowhere near as explosive as he was in high school. And it's about how much of that is going to linger because he's played on it. So I think like it's hard to say that without having the access to like the medical data that I'm sure NBA teams will have. But from my understanding, like NBA teams, I know there's been some like reports that came out recently, but like most teams probably aren't going to, not take him because of that. I think that he still has a lot of equity from what he did in high school. And like I mentioned, like, I mean, his whole play style has changed and he still looks good. And so like that also shows that he doesn't have to play one way, to be an impactful player. And if he's 60% where he is athletically, and theoretically, at least he can get that back, then maybe even a team gets a discount, whether it's, it's at the 2nd pick, 3rd pick, 4th pick, whoever decides to not take him will probably, end up conceding a player who has a lot of different ways to be good. And I think that's what it comes down to for me. So I wouldn't let it deter me from taking him.
Mm-hmm.
And one last question. So going back to Cam Boozer and Jalen Johnson together. So it's kind of a part 1, part 2 question. So part 1 is, do you believe that there wouldn't be any issues of Jalen and Cam playing together? Because some people think that Jalen is more of a 4, and some, those same people may not think that he would thrive in the same way as he is as a 4 at the 3 spot. And 2, now that you traded for Jonathan Kuminga, and so hypothetically, say if things go well with him, and say the Hawks do get a Cam Boozer or a Caleb Wilson type player, and of course you have Zach who's on the bench, how do you think all that is going to turn out? Because I don't know, and I feel like that someone is going to be out, whether that's between Kuminga or Zach. I just don't think that you're going to be able to keep all 4 of those guys in some way. Because I know for Kuminga, on his perspective, we know that he's wanting to get a starting role ever since he's been with Golden State, and he views himself as a future all-star. So of course he wants to get that big contract, wherever, how much he can get. And of course you say the same thing for Zach, but it seems like he's been accepting that bench role since he's been got to the bench. But how do you think all that is going to play out? Of course, it seems a lot to figure out, between Quinn and his staff. So how do you think that would play out hypothetically if that were to be the case?
Yeah, I think for Jalen and Boozer, I think, and this may sound like it's not possible, but I'd probably put Boozer at the wing, actually, and I'd put Jalen at the 4. And a lot of that's because, I mean, in high school, Boozer played more on the ball. Even he plays a good amount of ball at Duke as well. Like I think he's posting up because he has to, and I also think he gained weight because he had to, because of the way they have to play. But I mean, he was slimmer in his high school years, and I think that's not out of the realm of possibility he can get back to that playing weight, but also he already has like all the driving ability and the shooting ability to be on the wing. So offensively, I'm not worried at all. I think from a rotation perspective, if you take someone like Boozer, then that means Kuminga has to be the backup 4, and that means that Zach has to be the backup 3. And then if you take someone like Caleb Wilson, though, I think Caleb Wilson's pretty position locked to the 4. Like I don't think he can be a small ball 5. I think him and Jalen would be occupying quite literally as opposed to Boozer. Like I think they would be on the same spot on the floor, the same rotation, same role, same archetype in a lot of different ways. And then it becomes a little bit tougher with Kuminga and Zach because now they're the 3s and they're locked being the 3s because, I guess you could put Zach at the 2 as well. But I think that the positional issues become a little bit more complicated if you take someone like Caleb Wilson to me. I think if it's AJ DeBonsa, like he takes precedence over Zach likely. And then I think that's tougher from like a league viewing Zach as an asset perspective. Like, they want to retain value in him, but as soon as you move him to the bench behind someone else, then it signals to the rest of the league that you're not as invested in him as you are the other guys. So then now they're going to be like, hey, we're not giving up a first, whatever it may be. So I think they've got to think about it from that perspective. Like if Zach is in the long-term plans, you have to think about that, who you take at that position and whether they have enough, to not diminish his value to say, if you say that Zach's coming off the bench behind him. Like I think most GMs would probably say AJ has a starting spot over Zach. And so maybe that's enough for them to say, okay, maybe we can still play him here and he won't be too diminished or he won't be too discouraged even as an individual person to be coming off the bench behind him. So I think it's definitely politics from the position perspective. I think more than anything, I'd be worried about the defense with Boozer and Jalen. I think that's the much bigger concern for me.
Mm-hmm. And I guess the last 2 I got just on this topic in general, just the Hawks. I guess the first one, just because we were talking about the draft, so I'll end with that one first. Do you think this draft pick, if they get like a top 4 pick, if they get like a Caleb Wilson, if they get like their draft pick that they want, do you think, not even looking at the free agency, because how you said your free agency isn't that good this summer, do you think just off the pure development going into next year, will this make the Hawks like a top 6 team, top 7 team with a fully healthy roster? Kuminga's here from CJ McCollum is here, from the start of the season, along with that rookie. Do you think even getting the rookie finally puts them in position to at least compete next season?
Yeah, it's a good question because honestly, it should have been this year. Like they should have been a top 6 seed. Even with some of the start, of course, KP and TRAE out the lineup, it made it tough. But the East has never been this reeked by injury. Like next year, Boston has barely missed a step. They're going to be adding Tatum again, and then of course Indiana's going to bring back Halliburton. So that brings 2 teams that to full strength. That I think kind of makes it a little bit tougher. Now I think that it's not out the realm of the possibility, and I think it more so hinges on like what they do with the big man spot more than anything. Because the defense just hasn't. While defense has been better through All-Star break, like a lot of that is like snake oil. They played, like you mentioned earlier, like they played nobody. So like I still see a lot of the systematic issues, whether it's engagement or if it's size on the back end or if it's, whatever it may be. Like a lot of, like I mentioned, Onyeka's like overtasked a lot. So I think that their floor as a team will come down to how well they can play defense, and that won't change until they get another way to help Onyeka, whether it's another perimeter defender. But ideally someone who can help protect the rim with him, because I think his best strength has always been switching on the guys. So as long as they can find that guy, whether that's the draft or not, then I think that's the real like floor setter, not that rookie. Now this class is really special though too. So like, injecting a Cam Boozer, an AJ, a Darren Peterson into the lineup will do so much for them. But I think that their floor will be a lot more volatile if they can't figure out the defense.
And the last thing for me is on the Hawks. We talked about the team ceiling, so I just want to focus in on the new franchise player. Do you think if they are like a 3rd seed, 2 seed 1 year in the year 2030, whatever, do you think Jalen Johnson is the caliber of player that can bring home a most valuable player award to Atlanta? Just given how he's averaging almost 8 assists, 24 points, 10 rebounds, almost a triple-double. So do you think if he does that on a good team, can he bring home MVP regardless of the politics?
Yeah, he'll probably have the numbers. I think it comes down to whether that is like the best role for the team. Like for him to do that, I think it would just take so much out of him defensively, and he plays such an important role on the glass and as a playmaker. So will he still be able to get a triple-double if they have someone else running the offense, right? I think that would be the question, because he's a good enough passer, but will he have enough touches? Is it good for him to have that many touches? But I don't think, like, if they really wanted to, they could definitely get him to like 30, 10, and 10 every night, most likely. And his efficiency would hurt, whatever it may be, whatever the drawbacks are, but like if the team's good enough, I think he could definitely be in that caliber for sure.
And yeah, that's the last thing from me for the last topic, Garrett. Most stuff.
Yeah, so as we transition into the next topic, of course, we will discuss a familiar face, our guy TRAE Young, even though that he is a Washington Wizard, but we know that he has done so many great things for the Hawks franchise. He was once face of the franchise once upon a time. He was the best player we've seen since Dominique Wilkins. He led us to the Eastern Conference Finals once before, and it's very tough to see him go. So David, I do want to ask you, what was your take on the trade? I know a lot of fans were not too happy about the return that the Hawks received. Basically, we received CJ McCollum and Corey Kispert for TRAE Young. We didn't receive any draft compensation for his services. So, what is your take on that trade alone? And going, further down the line, do you think the Hawks or the Wizards, which team has more potential to win this trade, further down the line?
Mm-hmm. I think that because the direct return may not even be on the roster next year, it's probably going to be hard to even for most people to determine whether the Hawks won or lost. Because I mean, assuming Washington extends him, which I think they probably will, usually if it's $30 for $40 million a year, I think TRAE's going to play a role similar to what Fred VanVleet did for Houston, right? Where Fred VanVleet came in, gave them structure, and within 2 years, they were a competitive team. Now, I think that the Wizards' young guys aren't as the same caliber as Houston, but I think just, with whatever they do around him and AD, they should be a pretty decent team. And in the immediate, they will look like the winners, I think. It'll come down to 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line where, the thing is, once TRAE had that MCL injury, I think it made it really tough for them to figure out how they're going to approach the season because you just didn't see enough of him in the lineup. And, when he did come back, it didn't look as good. Maybe they're worried about the burst, committing to him long term. And when they did that extension for Dyson over TRAE, I think that was really the first indicator that maybe he won't be on this team in the upcoming season. So my reaction, man, it was rough. Like I mentioned, I've been a Hawks fan my whole life. And from an analyst perspective, I can understand why they did it and why they did it at that time. But from a fan perspective, I mean, that's the heart of the city in a lot of ways. And he brought a lot of life back to that team that we hadn't had in a very long time. And it was looking bleak. And I mean, I've modeled my game around him in a lot of ways. I emulate him sometimes when I play on the court. And, he still has a fan in me. But I think this isn't a trade that's like a one-to-one thing because the Hawks' definition of winning will come from the direct absence of him being on the roster, whether it's from a contract perspective or even a utilization perspective in terms of who has the ball in their hands. But I mean, he's such a special player that you can't recreate him. They'll never draft another TRAE, one of the best playmakers ever, one of the best, most electric players ever, quite honestly. And there's a lot of fond memories here in Atlanta. So they'll never replace the memories, they'll never replace the production, but maybe without committing that amount of money to him, maybe they can add players around Jalen, around Dyson, that help them win in the long run. But certainly the trade didn't make them better in the short term. And I think the Wizards will be competitive, even maybe to the same level as the Hawks next season in the short term.
So you think that they will be a play-in team at best next year?
I think they'll probably be a play-in team or something like that.
Okay.
Do you think anyone wears number 11 for the Atlanta Hawks ever again?
Dang, I don't know, because I think to my understanding, I don't know if you requested the trade or not. I think that probably determines a lot of it just from a PR perspective. But right. I mean, there's definitely an argument that, they should retire it. But I think that it's hard to figure out, man, because sometimes teams have different standards for retiring numbers. And I mean, for a team that hasn't won a championship since segregation, then it's even though he is an MVP, maybe they value that more, because I think if he played his whole career here, he'd have a statue. I don't think that's I think that's pretty you can't dispute that. So maybe they put enough stock into it. But I don't know how well the terms ended. It didn't seem like it was too bad, but
yeah, I mean, from outside looking in, I felt like it was nothing but love for TRAE. When he left the franchise, even when Jalen said they had that all-player meeting before the Wizards game, because they knew what the situation was. He said he got really emotional. Only those players had the right and the opportunity to have that sacred meeting. Maybe TRAE cried while he was talking to them, anything like that. And of course, if he did, I want to put it past him. I know that article came out and he said he was crying in the car on the way to the arena. So I definitely want to put it past him if he cried while talking to his teammates for the last time like that. So just definitely wanted your opinion on that, like his legacy here. And even then, I guess I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, because I know you're going to be objective. Now that his career is over and Luka Doncic is in Los Angeles, how do you feel about the 2018 trade night? Looking back on it,
Yeah, I mean, I remember when Luka got traded, I tweeted that like the Hawks finally won the trade because it was like it signified that Dallas had essentially given up on him. But I think that trade would have aged so much better if that pick for Cam Reddish would have hit. Because I think that's what gets lost a lot in the calculus is that it wasn't just trade for Luka. It was for Trae and another first-round pick. And that draft was a little tricky. They traded up for DeAndre Hunter as well. And that was such a position of need that they chased that when you had older guys who have had better careers. I mean, like PJ Washington, Cam Johnson, guys like that have been better players really from day one than both DeAndre Hunter and Cam Reddish. So I think that's the real kicker for me. Like I never really, when I was more, tilted towards being a fan, I definitely deluded myself into thinking that Trae was better than Luka. I don't think that's the argument, but I think Trae plus a top 10 first round pick, if that pick would have conveyed what the value that it could have potentially had in terms of if they had maybe went in a different direction, then I think it would have been a lot closer. And it's unfortunate that they were tied together for their, for the rest of their careers, because it wasn't fair to either of them. You know what I mean? Like they ideally you evaluate players in a vacuum and what they do for their teams individually or what they do for their city. But I mean, they were tied forever. So.
And I guess for the last one I got is for you, period. First off, thank you so much for your time coming on here. It's great they finally get to know you. Most definitely. Do you think Trae retires as a Washington Wizard? Before you answer, because we were on here the night, I think a couple of days after it happened, and I said I think at one point, I can't even bring up like salary caps and anything like, because that's looking so far down the road. But I do think at one point, if Washington doesn't live up to the hype some way, somehow, I do think Trae is going to play for like a big market team, not like New York or nothing like that. The Lakers are so difficult because I don't see Austin Reeves or Luka Doncic. I don't see them leaving Los Angeles. So, but I do think at one point Trae will play for a big ass market team if it doesn't work out in Washington. But do you think he will retire as a Washington Wizard, seeing how they're getting all these pieces for him already? So do you think he'll retire as a Wizard?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't think so, though. Like I think I'd agree with you that he probably wants a bigger stage at some point. And I would imagine that what Washington is selling him on is, hey, we want to develop these guys using your talents. If we want to be more competitive, can you help us do that? And if you do that, then we'll send you to where you want to go. It's probably what I would think more than anything. And he has infrastructure around him where it's not like, hey, my career is going to go to waste here. You know what I mean? Like there's a reasonable path towards him playing meaningful games. And I think that more than anything, because in a lot of ways he has to rehab his value. Like it's not as bad as Ja, but there's a reason Washington's the one that traded for him. And there is a reason the Hawks got that value back. So he's got to prove himself all over again to a new city who I think is going to embrace him. They already embraced him from what I saw from the game today. But he has to prove to the rest of the league, I think, that he's still that level player. And, even you mentioned the Lakers. I would have thought maybe Los Angeles Clippers as well, but then, they got Garland. So.
Yeah, because that's what makes it hard. Like I've really been trying to think what big market team would it be that he would go, because I feel it in my bones that he's gonna be like 31 years old or something like that. He's gonna just look around. He's gonna make the All-Star team a bunch of times. But Trae has since day one talked about winning a championship, and I just can't see him retiring without getting a championship, even if it means him being 34 years old in that diminished All-Star role as a third All-Star. Just throwing lobs to two All-Stars. If that's the role he has to play while averaging like 15 points and like 11 assists, 12 assists a game, like so be it. I do think at a certain point he will be like, because he already was on that stage with us, but I do think at a certain point he is going to be in a super big market team. One I never thought I'd see him play for, honestly.
Yeah, and one last question before we close the show out. So if Trae Young didn't get hurt in Game 4 against the Bucks in the 2021 playoffs, Eastern Conference Finals playoffs. Do you think that we would have been able to beat them in at least 7 games and make the finals, or do you think that we would have lost to the Bucks still if you didn't
I
get
think
hurt?
about that a lot. I mean, you got because right after that, you got the Brook Lopez game, which was ridiculous. Like Brook went for what, like 35 in game 5. He did a Giannis impression because Giannis had the hyperextension. And then
Yeah.
Giannis, and then Chris Middleton closes us out in game 6. So I
Yeah.
do wonder, you know, how the calculus of those games changes. Because I mean, when TRAE came back in game 6, he was obviously hampered, playing through a lot. And I think,
Yeah.
you know, even the fact that they were competitive, I mean, courtesy to Cam Reddish, you know, he had a huge game in his own right. I think that's people forget too. Like DeAndre Hunter was also banged up. Like everyone was banged up by that point. So I think having your star go down in that fashion, I mean, it changed everything. And I don't know if it stops what happened with Brook Lopez. I don't know if it stops what happened with Chris Middleton. Those guys lost their minds for 2 games back to back. But I mean, it certainly would have. I like to think it would have at least gone to 7. And if it goes to 7, it's a coin flip. And you know that finals trip. I mean, it would have meant that either Trey or Chris Paul won a ring, and I would have found a way to be happy. I'm a big Chris Paul guy. I mean, obviously I'd be upset, but that would have been a really interesting matchup.
Yeah. All right. Well, David, we really do appreciate your time with us to hang out with us and talk some hoops. We really do appreciate your presence with us. And before we let you go, can you just share with everybody where they can follow you on Instagram, Twitter, and where they can follow your work?
For sure. Yeah, appreciate y'all reaching out. Happy to come on. I'm David Lee D. Lee for 3 on pretty much all platforms: Twitter, TikTok, Substack, YouTube. I'm talking NBA draft. Yeah. Oh, my website, thefifthfactor.io as well, where I do draft analytics.
All right. All right. Well, again, we really do appreciate you, man. And that's a wrap for our 100th episode tonight. Be sure to, subscribe, share, comment, like to our YouTube channel. We really do appreciate you guys. And like me and Antoine said earlier, that we will continue to do this and bring on very talented people like David himself. And we're going to continue to do that. So, Antoine, you have anything before we close out?
Yeah, man, I was going to say, hey, if you're available around the draft, we would love to have you back on after the Hawks finally have their rookie, so we can discuss how like they'll impact the team. And now that they finally have that player for the future, and the Hawks aren't trying to be back in the lottery for a while after this. So I've been saying that this last pick, of course, it's not. They're always going to be on the hunt for a first-round pick if you can get it, absolutely. But I think ideally, this is the last time they want to be in the lottery for a while. So definitely want to get your feedback on that upcoming rookie, especially in this stacked draft class. So for sure, love to have you back.
Bet.
All right. All right, guys. Thank you, guys. And we'll see you guys next time.
One band, one sound. They give me my theme music.